The horror when capitalism and power lie in the hands of the wicked is how a sharp instrument of war is forged. These children, just born by their mothers, before the amniotic fluid has even dried, are conscripted into the army. By the age of 5, the first lesson they receive is to face bloody, gruesome scenes head-on. Instructors release ferocious wild boars for them to slaughter with packs of hunting dogs. By age 8, they begin brutal, rigorous martial arts training. They must beat their opponent until they collapse completely, losing the ability to resist. At the same time, they must pass a series of complex intellectual challenges. Every day, they must complete a 30 kilometers cross-country mountain run. If anyone is exhausted and cannot keep up with the company's speed, the army will summarily execute them right on the spot, using that as a deterrent for the remaining ones. At age 15, they begin exposure to firearms and conduct shooting training. In their eyes, there is only the distinction between enemy and ally. Once an enemy appears, even if there are hostages, they will be ruthlessly destroyed all at once. This hellish training style lasts for a full 17 years. They become cold, emotionless, devoid of affection or feelings. The only thing to do is obey orders and kill, molded into true killing machines. Those who pass the final assessment will have a string of numbers carved onto their faces. That is their code and blood type symbol. Soldier King Todd is the most prominent among these soldiers. Since the age of 18, he has rolled through the battlefield, relying on unparalleled bravery and a determination that views death as lighter than a feather, time and again completing missions deemed impossible. Through countless battles, he has killed who knows how many enemies. Wherever he passes is a scene of devastated life. Yet, despite achieving illustrious feats, they can forever only hide in the shadows. No honor and no medals. Every statistic shows that Todd's team is the perfect killing machine. But nothing in the world escapes the iron law. The waves behind push the waves ahead. Although they have served perfectly for 30 years, eventually they cannot avoid the fate of being abandoned by the army. That day, Colonel Meekum, the newly appointed commander, brought a batch of bald recruits. They are all the most advanced super soldiers, not only younger, but with even stronger genes. Whether it is endurance, speed, or reaction capability, they can all leave the veterans miles behind to raise the overall combat power of the army. The colonel decided to use this batch of rookies to replace veterans like Todd. However, these words were barely spoken when veteran Commander Church strongly objected. His objection was not because of a deep 30-year friendship with the veterans, but because he believed that veterans who have been through 100 battles possess seasoned experience and, moreover, have never suffered a defeat. These things are what the new soldiers cannot compare to. Amidst the argument, they finally decided to pass a competition to determine who is superior. First is the shooting test. Under high-speed shooting situations, the rookies' machine guns have almost no recoil and the hit rate is as high as 99%. Even so, veteran Commander Church was still not convinced. Next is the endurance competition. Church sent out his ace card, Soldier King Todd, to respond. As for Meekum, to prove the rookie's strength, he allowed the veteran to run 20 minutes ahead, then sent out his ace beast Kane. Receiving the order, Kane immediately activated full-speed running mode. Before long, he had caught up with Todd running ahead and, thanks to clear advantages, won the race. What is more terrible is that Todd was panting after running 30 kilometers, while Kane seemed as if nothing happened, not gasping a single breath. This gap was truly too obvious. Next was the climbing test. This time Todd still climbed first, but Kane quickly caught up and surpassed him. This speed was indeed faster than a monkey climbing a tree. However, Church believed that these tests did not fully demonstrate combat capabilities, so he suggested a hand-to-hand duel in the air between the veteran and the rookie. Meekum, to prove the rookie's strength, played big, actively requesting 2 more physically fit veterans. He declared his rookie could fight 1 against 3. Under the commander's order, 2 other veterans also climbed onto the iron chains. They spread out to form an encirclement, and a knockout match deciding their fate officially began. Sure enough, even in a 3 against 1 situation, the rookie still held the upper hand. Speed and strength both crushed the veterans. In no time, he knocked 1 veteran down. This person fell from high above and died on the spot. Immediately after was a familiar combo attack that knocked out the second veteran. Seizing this opportunity, Todd quickly jumped behind the rookie and strangled Kane's head. But Kane did not strike in the usual way. He took a bite out of Todd's arm. Todd also did not yield. He directly used his hand to hook into Kane's eye, causing him to lose sight in one eye. But eventually, Todd still could not escape the fate of being knocked down from above. Kane used a few elbow strikes to knock Todd down below. Fortunately, The bodies of his teammates on the ground created a certain cushioning layer for him. The disparity in strength between the two sides was too clear. Now even Church was fully convinced. So Meekum shot dead the veteran who was in a coma. This proved that the era of the veterans has passed. Finally, the bald rookie successfully replaced the veterans who had served for many years. But what they did not know is that the decades of combat experience of these veterans is something no one can surpass. Afterwards, they threw the dead soldiers onto a remote trash planet. As for Todd, because he was in a coma, he was mistaken for dead, and thanks to that, luckily escaped death. Severely injured, Todd quickly woke up. He looked at his two teammates who had gone cold beside him and the surrounding environment, momentarily not understanding what was happening. Just then, an ear-piercing siren suddenly rang out. The bay door of the waste transport ship opened. Todd, along with his teammates, was thrown down to this planet like piles of trash. This planet is called Trash Planet. Todd luckily survived, silently watching the spaceship slowly leave. His heart full of hatred but forced to face reality. Looking into the distance, before his eyes were mountains of trash piled up like mountains. Scenes of trash piled upon trash with no end in sight. However, what surprised him was that in an environment as bad as this hell, there were still humans living. Seeing this, Todd immediately chased after to investigate. But just as he climbed down from the pile of trash, the sound of howling wind echoed from afar. A violent storm of yellow sand was heading straight for him. Todd immediately ran forward, clinging tightly to the fence in front of him. The powerful tornado almost swept him up into the sky. Luckily, thanks to his overly tough physique, he managed to keep his body steady. After weathering the storm, Todd continued to follow the fence forward. It seemed this fence was intentionally left by someone. The purpose was so people could move forward in sandstorms. Following the rope, Todd arrived in front of a crude fortress built from waste. Further ahead, there still seemed to be traces of human habitation. Years of fighting had made him extremely cautious. He quickly crouched down low, afraid of being detected. But right at this moment, a strong wind suddenly hit, catching him off guard, and he fell hard from the stone step to the ground. He tried to struggle up, but unexpectedly discovered that not only adults lived here, but there were even children. However, his injuries worsened, causing him to quickly lose consciousness and faint. The sudden appearance of Todd immediately caused the residents here to fall into panic. They urgently convened a resident meeting. This planet had not had outsiders set foot on it for decades, so everyone was curious and suspicious about his appearance. What exactly was this soldier's purpose in coming here? At this moment, a stout man just returned from patrol. He reported that no traces of other troops or warships were detected in the vicinity. But the residents here had found it very difficult to rebuild their homes on this land, escaping the shadow of war. They feared Todd's appearance would break this hard-earned peace, so they simultaneously expressed a desire to expel this uninvited guest. However, the female leader with a kind heart argued that the opponent had no weapons and was heavily injured. With a humanitarian spirit, she decided to temporarily let him stay. After all, their ability to survive on this planet was thanks to unity and mutual support. It was also this female leader's kindness that helped the entire refugee camp later escape a destructive disaster. The injured Todd was arranged to stay in the home of the couple Mace. The first time Sandra, Mace's wife, saw Todd, she saw the battle tattoos crisscrossing his arms, and fear involuntarily rose in her heart. But she still gathered all her courage to spoon medicine water into Todd's mouth. The next day, Mace's family was playing happily when Todd, feeling better, suddenly walked in. Seeing his cold face, Mace immediately became tense. After all, Todd radiated an aura of alienation from the world, as if ready to fight at any time. At this moment, Mace even offered a crutch he made himself, intending to give it to him. But in Todd's eyes, this was a potential act of attack. His expression immediately became ferocious. Seeing this, Mace hurriedly demonstrated how to use the crutch for him to see. This pressure would make any normal person afraid. When eating dinner, Todd had only one action: eating ravenously. The habit trained in the army was etched into his DNA. Mace thought he was very hungry, so he poured his own portion of rice for Todd. But this warm action attracted everyone's hostility toward Todd. A man who disliked him asked if he was a deserter. Hearing this, Todd immediately stood up and firmly declared he was not a deserter. The man asked again, then why didn't he go with the army? Todd hesitated a bit, then stated the reason that he was replaced by superior soldiers. Hearing Todd's story, everyone suddenly fell into silence. Later, Todd learned from Sandra that the reason everyone was hostile to soldiers was because they were not original residents of this planet. They had fled Earth to escape war. But during an interstellar migration, their ship unexpectedly crashed here. Reluctantly, They could only struggle to survive on this desolate planet. Hearing this, Todd recalled his former self who saw people only to kill, never thinking of the feelings of a dead person's family. At this moment, he deeply realized that killing only brings endless pain to everyone. After that, Todd gradually integrated into life here, learning how to grow vegetables and fruits with Sandra. It is worth mentioning that he realized he knew almost nothing except fighting, and Sandra placed a young vegetable plant in Todd's hand, telling him to plant a tree himself and patiently teaching him how to adapt to life here. That day, Todd went out with everyone to pick up trash because everything in the village was picked up from here. They turned useless waste into treasures. However, storms on this planet always arrive unexpectedly. Seeing this, everyone hurriedly secured themselves to the protective fence made of chains. But the stout man, before taking protective measures, was swept away by the wind. Everyone tried their best, but could not pull him back. Seeing the fat man about to be swept into the trash crusher, at the critical moment, Todd acted in time. Relying only on his own strength, he easily saved the stout man. Waiting for the storm to pass, everyone was celebrating together because the stout man had escaped death by a hair's breadth. Then Todd saw a submachine gun on the ground. Without a self-defense weapon, he always felt something was missing by his side. But as soon as he picked up the weapon, everyone was terrified. Seeing this, Mace cautiously approached to demand the gun back. Although a bit hesitant, Todd still proactively handed over the gun. This showed that he had placed his trust in the residents here. The stout man saw this, quickly stood up and loudly thanked Todd, but the response was still that expressionless face. However, this was also the first time in his life he heard someone say thank you to him. Time passed, and Todd gradually realized that besides charging into battle and bravely killing enemies, life has many other beautiful experiences. When Christmas arrived, the residents enthusiastically invited Todd to join the grand celebration party, hoping he could integrate into the new living environment. But psychological trauma left by war cannot be easily healed. The happy atmosphere filled the hall, but in Todd's eyes, it distorted into a battlefield of flesh and blood. Stimulating scenes kept returning to his mind. He feared he would lose control and harm others. He hurriedly fled the hall, trying to punch the iron barrel to suppress the violent emotions inside. Although his hands were bloodied, with every punch landed, the indelible guilt became even stronger. He fell again into memories of killing in the past. The old people and women murdered by him seemed to appear right before his eyes. In a daze, he saw someone rushing toward him. He, by unconditional reflex, reached out to pin that person down. Seeing the gears about to crush the stout man, he hurriedly cried for help. It was that cry for help that woke Todd from his memory. It turned out the stout man wanted to repay the life-saving favor, so he wanted to gift him a scarf. When he looked up, he saw dozens of eyes, large and small, staring at him. Everyone was terrified. Even the female leader began to entertain the idea of expelling him. Even Mace and his wife, who always took care of him, began to feel frightened of him. And once people have raised a defensive shield against you, anything you do can be seen as a great villain. Until one day, Todd woke up again from a nightmare. When he woke up, he saw Mace's little child sharing his favorite toy with him. Just as he prepared to leave, he saw a venomous snake on the ground. If it were a normal person, perhaps they would kill the snake immediately. But Todd chose another way. He threw a shoe out and trained Mace's son on how to protect himself. But the bewildered boy didn't understand what was happening at all. Seeing the snake lunge at the boy, in a moment hanging by a thread, Todd grabbed the snake in time, but he didn't crush it. Instead, he threw the snake back to the ground, telling the boy to deal with it himself. However, this scene caused Mace, who just ran over, to misunderstand. He used an iron bar to stab the small snake to death violently. They could not understand Todd's action and condemned him as inhumane, almost killing their son. After this incident, everyone gathered in the hall again to decide whether Todd should stay or go. Everyone agreed that Todd could hardly integrate with a group containing so many children like this. His staying was definitely a threat to everyone's safety. Finally, everyone decided to let him leave here. Todd's heart was in pain, but didn't know how to express it. Finally, he silently accepted the fate of being abandoned again. Before leaving, Mace prepared a full survival kit for him and promised that if he needed help, he could always come back. Todd looked at the child and Mace's couple with deep affection, then turned and walked away without saying a word. Nowhere to go, he could only trudge back to the original trash pile. This tough man, who usually only shed blood but not tears, now silently shed tears of sadness. This was also the first time he felt the complexity of human emotions. The next morning, Mace and his wife were sleeping in bed when a venomous snake crawled onto their bed. Seeing it about to attack them, A small hand suddenly grabbed the snake's tail. Mace and his wife woke up, seeing their son bravely holding a shoe to hit the venomous snake. Seeing their son, who was usually very afraid of snakes, become so brave, Mace realized they had misunderstood Todd. Todd did not push their son into danger. His way was the correct educational method. Full of regret, Mace quickly got dressed, deciding to go find Todd. He braved all dangers following the rope to search. Finally, he found Todd standing dazed in an abandoned pipe. He apologized to Todd for the words said that day and tried to ask for his forgiveness. But Todd looked toward the distant sky, only seeing a giant warship slowly gliding over their heads and finally landing in a place not far away. Mace saw this and intended to raise his hand for help, but was stopped by Todd in time. Because Todd realized this was not a normal transport ship, but a military warship loaded with weapons. When the bay door slowly opened, 2 armored vehicles and a group of fully armed soldiers slowly drove out. This army was the Gen Warriors led by Meekum. They came here to conduct live combat training. It turned out Colonel Meekum, just having taken office, needed to establish merit to prove himself. He took the invasion of Trash Planet as a testing ground for Gen Warriors. Whether there were residents on the planet or not, they were all considered enemies for the soldiers to practice on. Todd hurriedly pulled Mace to run back to the refugee camp to report the news. But on the way back, Kane accidentally discovered the 2 people fleeing. He didn't care who was ahead, only knowing to execute the order to destroy all living creatures. So he decisively pressed the launch button, followed by a fierce volley of supplementary fire. Seeing the 2 still running as fast as flying, he launched another artillery shell that hit the target. Mace was unfortunately having one leg severed by the explosion. Todd saw this and without hesitation grabbed Mace's collar, pulling him quickly to hide in the lingering fire smoke. Thanks to that, they avoided the scan by the armored vehicle's thermal imaging scanner. The armored vehicle followed the chains placed on the ground, slowly advancing toward the residential area. Mace, with one leg severed by the blast, lay on the ground groaning in pain. Too heavily injured, he knew he wouldn't live much longer. Before dying, he implored Todd to help him take care of his wife and child. Having finished his instructions, he stopped breathing due to excessive blood loss. Todd's heart was indescribably sad, the ferocious look from before appearing once again. At this time, the explosion had alarmed the surrounding residents. They immediately fell into chaos. No one knew what disaster this suddenly appearing warship would ultimately bring. The female leader, unaware of the situation, was still comforting residents not to panic. She stepped out to conduct friendly negotiations with the opponent. But what answered her was a missile. The civilians panicked immediately and quickly raised guns to fire back. But facing heavy armored soldiers armed to the teeth, the refugees had absolutely no ability to resist. In no time, they were beaten into scattering everywhere. 3 fully equipped Gen Warriors rushed into the refugee area, deploying a wide-range search and slaughtering survivors ruthlessly. The fierce fire burned the residents, causing them to scream miserably. The scene was no different from a hell on earth. The reason Meekum only sent 3 people was that he thought to deal with these commoners, not much manpower was needed. However, in this moment hanging by a thread, Todd appeared like a god. For these professional tasks, it still must be handed over to experts to handle. Todd might not be good at farming or picking up trash, but in fighting, he is braver than anyone. The second soldier holding a flamethrower intended to burn Sandra and the child alive. Unexpectedly, Todd suddenly appeared in front of them, shouldering a rocket launcher. The warrior was indeed very strong, but that didn't mean he couldn't be killed. On the contrary, due to a lack of actual combat experience, Todd destroying them was truly as easy as turning over a hand. 2 teammates being killed in succession caused the last Gen Warrior to panic completely. He held a Gatling gun and swept fire madly, but after running out of ammo, he stood frozen on the spot to change the magazine. Just then, Todd appeared again, firing a shot that hit his propeller, ending his life in a unique way. The death of 3 Gen Warriors caused Meekum to be alert. He assumed the opponent must have powerful reinforcements. Seeing Meekum confused, Church standing nearby suggested he withdraw troops first. Wait until night to bring all heavy weapons to launch an attack. Meekum heard this and immediately followed. But this also gave Todd time to prepare. He quickly rearranged the equipment of the 3 soldiers and painted 3 camouflage stripes symbolizing combat on his face. This time he was no longer fighting just to obey orders, but for the residents of this place. By evening, 2 heavy war chariots continued to pull in. As a veteran who had fought for 30 years, Todd understood their battle plan clearly. Before the opponent could assess the situation, he was one step ahead. Ambushing on the path the armored vehicles definitely had to pass. Before they could open fire, They were ambushed by Todd hiding in the dark. He decisively took down two machine gunners. A confrontation between veteran and rookie officially began here. The two war chariots received orders to immediately disperse, preparing a pincer attack on the remaining refugees. At the same time, they sent infantry to conduct a wide-range search to find the sneaker attacker, and this created an opportunity for Todd to defeat them one by one. A Gen warrior just carefully poked his head out when Todd, quick of hand and eye, grabbed the gun barrel, throwing him hard so his whole body fell into the snake pit nearby. The screams immediately attracted the attention of teammates. They quickly launched flares, and blinding blue light immediately covered the entire trash dump. But for an experienced soldier king, these were just futile efforts. A soldier just turned his back and met Todd immediately. The remaining two soldiers heard the commotion and quickly ran over. They didn't hesitate to hold flamethrowers and sweep fire madly into every corner ahead. But after burning for a long time, they discovered nothing. Just when they thought it was safe, Todd suddenly rose from underwater. The gunshot revealed Todd's position too. The remaining warriors immediately surrounded him. However, what was waiting for them was a bigger trap. Just as they were searching everywhere, dense bullets were fired from behind, and two more warriors fell to the sound of gunfire. The others saw this and immediately surrounded toward the direction of the gunfire. But when they finally arrived, they discovered the supposed enemy was actually teammates dead long ago. Everyone immediately realized they had fallen into a trap, but by this time wanting to retreat was too late. Todd didn't hesitate to detonate the bomb. Teammates fell one after another, but they hadn't even touched the enemy's shadow. These warriors, who knew no fear, were now so terrified they dared not take another step. Todd was seen tying himself tightly to an iron rack because he knew a sandstorm was coming. The rookies, wet behind the ears, arriving here knew absolutely nothing about the harsh environment on this planet. The next second, a wind destroying everything swept through. The Gen warriors, unable to prepare in time, suffered heavy casualties. Losing so many soldiers, Meekum completely panicked. Now, besides the spaceship, they only had two heavy war chariots left. Meekum quickly adjusted tactics, ordering one armored vehicle to stay put to observe the situation outside. The other would rush into the refugee camp to clear obstacles. Todd was not confused because the opponent split forces. After the first armored vehicle acted, Todd suddenly fell from the sky. A burst of bullets took down the machine gunner immediately. The soldier responsible for observation, before reacting, was shot dead one by one. Then he yanked the hatch open, throwing two grenades straight into the armory. The remaining war chariot was driven by Kane. He arrived at the refugee area and madly attacked the refugees in the camp. Violent explosions rang out incessantly. Countless residents, unable to hide, fell successively under the intense firepower. Just as Kane was excitedly firing, he suddenly noticed War Chariot number 1 approaching. He thought it was a teammate coming to reinforce, so he ordered it to support the attack on the side, but he completely did not expect the person driving this War Chariot to be Todd. Two soldiers unable to dodge were crushed into minced meat on the spot. The remaining soldiers saw something was wrong, hurriedly opening fire on the War Chariot. But it was too late. Todd slammed on the accelerator, and the two armored vehicles collided in the blink of an eye. At this point, all Gen warriors lost contact. Meekum on the warship was completely stunned. He could not expect that these expensive Gen warriors would be completely wiped out. Meekum could not face his own failure, completely losing control. If a head-on battle couldn't win, then he would use a nuclear bomb to destroy this entire planet. So he sent a few veterans to plant a nuclear bomb strong enough to destroy the planet. He did not know that this very decision of his would push himself into the grave with his own hands. On the other side, Kane had great fortune and a big life, so he wasn't crushed to death, but only had half a life left, heavily injured. He picked up a teammate's adrenaline syringe, without hesitation injecting it all into his body. Immediately, he felt full of strength again. He angrily rushed into the refugee area. At this time, Todd was leading the hiding refugees preparing to flee. But just as they reached the door, they were blocked by Kane. Todd quickly put down the child he was holding and told Sandra to lead everyone back. He wanted to fight a life-and-death battle with Kane, using real strength to prove who the real Soldier King was. At this moment, both could not contain the anger in their hearts. A duel between a soldier and a Gen warrior officially opened. Just after a few moves, Todd was always in a passive position taking hits. After all, Kane was young, strong, and genetically modified. Fighting head-on, he was clearly not Kane's opponent. However, Todd, with resilient will, could stubbornly stand up every time he fell. Seeing he really couldn't win the fight, at this time Todd played a trick. He peeked at the curved knife on the ground. Kane followed his gaze and immediately understood his intention. Just as he bowed his head to pick up the curved knife to end this battle, Todd seized the opportunity to yank the helicopter propeller down, slashing Kane open. Kane, unwilling to accept defeat, still wanted to counterattack. Todd didn't hesitate to use full force to attack his wound. Then he snapped his arm, finally clasping both hands to land a heavy punch that sent him flying to the ground. Although Todd failed in the hand-to-hand match with Kane, he single-handedly destroyed all the invading Jin soldiers. He relied not on a strong physique, but on wisdom and combat experience accumulated over 100 battles. Something these Jin warriors, only enhanced in muscle, absolutely could not do. At this time, the veterans had activated the nuclear bomb's countdown clock, but unexpectedly discovered the refugees hiding on one side, and Todd was also standing next to them looking toward them. The black soldier frowned in astonishment. Isn't this their old captain? In this moment, the veterans regained their faith. They simultaneously raised their hands to salute each other. Without superfluous words, they became comrades fighting side by side again. At this time, Meekum saw the veterans hadn't returned for a long time, so he decided to abandon them, ordering subordinates to prepare the ship to flee from here. But Church insisted on waiting for subordinates to return safely before leaving. Just as he stepped up to object, he was shot dead by Meekum with a single shot. The subordinates nearby saw this and were terrified, hurriedly and obediently starting the engine. But just as he ordered the pilot to start the spaceship preparing to flee, steady footsteps suddenly rang out inside the ship's cabin. In no time, Meekum and the pilot were captured by the veterans. Then they escorted him in front of Todd. Meekum saw this and was terrified to the extreme. Only at this moment did he know who his opponent was. This arrogant egomaniac desperately begged Todd to spare his life. Urine could not be held back from flowing from his pant leg, but no matter how they begged, they could not change Todd's decision. Ordered to throw them out of the spaceship and quickly close the bay door so these guys could also taste the feeling of being abandoned. Along with starting the engine, Todd flew the spaceship, slowly taking off. At this time, the time for the nuclear bomb to explode was not much. They quickly entered the code to stop the nuclear bomb from exploding. But these veterans had changed the old code long ago. In the end, they still swallowed the consequences they caused themselves. In the final part of the movie, Todd flew the spaceship successfully, escaping into outer space. He set a new route for the spaceship. The destination was a lush green planet full of vitality and rich resources. They would rebuild their homeland there. The story ends here. This is a movie released in 1998. Quite different from other Hollywood movies full of complex, flashy settings. The main character in the movie speaks a mere 104 words throughout the work, but has left an unforgettable impression in the hearts of the 9X generation audience. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching the movie. How do you find this movie? Please comment down below.